What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast, episode number 223. As always, your host here, Bailey Egbert, and joined with me is the captain, my co-host, Mr. Andrew Full.
What's up, dude?
I'm scatterbrained, dude. I'm mushy.
Got your tongue?
Yeah, I'm glad. I was telling you guys offline here, I needed this tonight. I needed an hour to sit down, talk fishing, have a beer, chill with the boys, and crank out a podcast. This is things that I look forward to.
Now that you're working the real life.
Yeah, dude. I give a lot of these folks props for it. I mean, good grief, trying to balance everything is. I mean, you have a family and a kid, which is a whole nother variable to balance. But good gosh, between a job, business, and trying to build a brand, it's crazy, man. Yeah. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you with a job, guide business, and a family, and Paquette, trying to live the dream, and obviously grinding as a pro angler. It's no easy task. It is no easy task.
So let me just run down my past hour from 7 o'clock to now. So Amanda left to go to the gym. I put Emmy to bed. I ate dinner. I put line on that new rod I got, balanced out a reel. I did 2 loads of laundry, folded clothes, cleaned my bathroom, washed the dishes, swept the living room floor, and got up here by 7:55.
Good grief. Dishes usually take me like 45 minutes themselves.
We wash them after every meal because I don't have a dishwasher. So there was only like 8 or 9 to wash. But yeah,
that's not bad.
That was my last hour. But that's like every hour of my life is just something like that. It's just insane.
Nonstop.
Yeah. Exhausted.
Yeah, I probably couldn't even recount my day today. It's just mush. I just kind of want to like move on to Friday.
Understood. I hate days like that. I actually wish I had more days like that because most of my day is monotony of staring at a computer waiting for a customer to walk in at my full-time job, and I'm just like
Well, dude, hopefully I'm hoping you get a week or you get a day off on Monday for this.
We do.
July 4th. All right, cool.
We do.
Well, July 4th is obviously this weekend. It is a mad holiday weekend to be out and about, especially for an angler. For those, it's nice for me being the kayak realm. I can kind of sneak out in the ponds and such that aren't going to have crazy jet skis and pleasure boaters and wake boats. But for those who are trying to get out and fish this weekend, be safe because there are a bunch of idiots that are going to be out this weekend drinking and being crazy. Make sure you guys are having a good time, but also be safe. But Andrew, do you have any crazy plans for July 4th weekend?
So my sister's graduation party is Saturday. I have to work Saturday morning. I have to go fertilize my grandfather's yard either tomorrow night or Saturday. Getting dinner with Dustin and Jeff tomorrow. Cat's got my tongue as well. And then Saturday night after the grad party, I'm coming home, hooking up my boat, driving to Rochester, spending the weekend in Rochester, and I think me and the wife are going to go bass fishing on Monday somewhere.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Honeyway just to start creeping around for the dash for cash I have coming up.
There you go. I'm doing relatively the same. The fiance and I are going to her parents tomorrow night, and then for the weekend we're meeting up with all of her college friends. So it'll be an interesting weekend. And then I'm making her get up early on Monday morning because I want to go practice as well for another NYKBF derb coming up. So, but other than that,
good luck.
What's that?
Good luck getting up early.
Yeah, I'll just be gone. I'll be on the water by the time she gets up. But folks, before we get Mr. Garrett Paquette on here, we're going to talk about summer offshore fishing. We're going to talk a whole bunch of stuff tonight with Garrett. Make sure you guys head over to our Instagram because we are running a pretty sick queen tackle jig giveaway. We're giving away 10 flipping jigs, 10 finesse football jigs, 10 swim jigs, and 10 switchblades. All the jigs being tungsten jigs for those who may not be familiar with queen tackle. Make sure you guys head over there and jump in on that. Super easy to do. But without further ado, I think we should get him on here. Mr. Garrett Paquette. What's going on, dude?
What's up, guys?
Hey,
I
man,
appreciate
good
you
to
having
see
me
you.
back.
Yeah.
I was actually just getting on Instagram to get in on that Queen Tackle giveaway because they're not a sponsor of mine, and I use a ton of their stuff, so I could use winning that thing. So
fair enough.
I know we've had conversations before about the hammerhead, but unfortunately, no hammerheads are being given away in this one. I poked some fun at Jeff, and I was like, "Man, no hammerheads? You're not going to give away the juice?" He's like, "I can't keep them in stock because people buy them so much."
Yeah, I believe that, man. That is a hot bait, and I know we've talked about that a lot. I've had a lot of success with that bait, and it's just a good product and a good family, and it's good to see them doing well. I mean, they're a fastly growing company, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was texting with Jeff this morning before work got crazy, and him and KJ were on a small little Adirondack lake, and they were jacking like half pounders to 2 pounders. And he goes, "Is there any lakes up here that have big bass in them? Because we can't find them."
I would have sent him to Black Lake, probably. That's his best shot at a big one.
Yeah, I told him to go to Cranberry.
Or Cranberry, yeah.
That was a good one. But here's the question for you, Garrett. Will the hammerhead be tied on in the northern swing for you?
Not the hammerhead. It's just such a big profile. And like that's like my TVA jig, Lake Fort, more largemouth orientated stuff. Okay. I like I don't throw a ton of jigs for smallmouth, but if I do, it's like the finesse football or some kind of finesse skirt jig, something a little smaller than the hammerhead.
All right,
maybe like that'd be something more like in the fall time when they get on like bigger crayfish, perch, stuff like that. I'd give that a shot, but
heard that.
Probably not, but maybe you sparked a little idea. I might have to go back out there and keep frigging up my rods that I've done for the last 7 hours.
And redo them all again. Yeah. It's the worst.
I didn't say anything. Don't get me in trouble. But what's your go-to trailer for that hammerhead?
I like a twin tail. So I got 2 and nothing like brand specific, bait specific, just 2 styles. Right. I like a twin tail grub because it's extremely fast when it falls. And I can keep it down there. And I work a football jig a little differently, especially like ledge fishing on clean bottom. A lot of guys want to sit there and, kind of work the rod up. I almost sweep it. I mean, I'm working the bait as fast as I can, just sweeping it to where I'm feeling the bottom the whole way. It's not a drag. I mean, the bait's probably just doing this constant movement. So I like that twin tail grub, especially because our fish are so pressured now. I get a lot of bites doing that. And like if the conditions are real good, the wind's blowing, I feel like they're really feeding, I'll just go to, just like a 4 or 5 inch crayfish style trailer, whichever one you like to throw, something like that. So those are kind of my 2 things. I got a bigger crayfish, crawfish style, and then that twin tail grub. That's all I throw in that.
Yeah, it's been kind of cool to experiment in the past 1.5 to 2 years with that hammerhead since kind of discovering that thing, because it does have a longer shank hook on it. So you kind of you take like an average football jig where you can put like a rage chunk on it or something like that. It's not going to fit on that hammerhead because it's a longer shank. But it's kind of cool to play around with that. But dude, since you guys' last tournament, which was, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It was Gunnersville, right?
About 6 weeks.
It's been a little bit of a break, yeah.
Yeah. What's been going on in the life of Garrett Paquette since Gunnersville?
Yeah, I've been home in Michigan the whole time. I've been fishing a couple little tournaments around the house. We had a ton of little lakes here that I fish on. Been out to St. Clair quite a bit. That's been fun. I had some guys up from right when I got back. I had some guys from Big Bite come up and caught a bunch of them off beds. That was fun. And then fished a couple tournaments. In the 4-week stretch that was there. And then I just had a buddy coming from Arkansas. And he just left yesterday, and we went out to St. Clair a couple more days and smashed them there again too. So. Just really, kind of enjoying the break. I mean, I was on the road for 8 weeks before I got back, so it was the longest stretch of my career to this day. I mean, it was grueling. So it was nice to come back and just unwind, take some days off and just chill out.
I bet it was. 8 weeks is a long time, dude.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, it wasn't 8 weeks in like one spot. It was Texas, this side of Texas, Alabama to Virginia to Alabama. I mean, it was
back to Texas.
It was like I think I did 9,000 miles, maybe something like that.
Oh,
so it was a lot. Yeah.
I feel like that's like more logistically, mentally exhausting than just the actual like getting out and fishing and waking up toward a deal. I feel like just like planning that out is probably more exhausting mentally than anything else.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, trying to like situate, you know, where you're going to stay, where you're going to stop, what you're going to do in between. Because we had a lot of, like, for me, living in Michigan, it's tough because we got a Texas tournament, then we have a week off, and we have another Texas tournament. You know, I don't live 3 hours away where I can just zip home. If I were to drive home, you know, it'd take me 2 days. I come, you know, I'm home for 3 days, and I'm back for 2 days. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to leave. So I got stuck with like a lot of in-between time where I was just like killing time. You know, I went to Rayburn for a little bit, but it was tough to fill those spaces. And like you said, plan all that out and, you know, make sure you had a place to stay. And it was pretty expensive. Sitting there
and then the driving too. Whew.
Yeah, the driving, you know, never sleeping in your bed. By the end of it, I mean, I felt it, you know. I mean, I try to keep myself in pretty good shape, but that was a true test.
So I guess the question is, what was that first night home in bed like? Did you sleep for like 15 hours and just feel rejuvenated the next day, or were you like up at 4 and like, crap, what am I doing?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like when I get so tired, I'm like not tired, if that makes sense. You know, like I was like so exhausted that I didn't want to sleep. So I kind of just got up the next day and you know, I was kind of on that schedule, waking up at 5, waking up at 6 every day. And then once after I was home for a day, then I crashed and, you know, got my 10, 11, 12 hours of sleep, whatever it ended up being, and kind of reset everything.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I kind of experienced that when I drove back from Texas. I went literally almost like a full day of driving because I stopped and I literally did like 45 minutes the first night. I literally just drove to Dallas from the expo and then stayed there and drove all the way to New York. And I hit like that phase where you're like you're just like holding your eyes open to stay awake, but then it like regenerated for a few hours. I only slept for like 4 hours when I got home, but then that night after that, I slept for like 13. Hey, you had to catch up. But
I felt bad that day because I would text you and I'm like, you're like, okay. And I'm like, you all right? And you're like, I'm trying to nap, but you just woke me up. And then all of a sudden I see you like filming something. And I'm like, oh, I feel terrible.
I'm up.
I think I did that to you like 3 times that day.
Yeah, it's okay. It is all right. But so Garrett, obviously when you guys left Gunnersville, things were like, fish were kind of moving out on the ledges. They were kind of making their way out. There's fish in the grass. But it wasn't like a full-blown summer pattern yet. And by now, all these areas, especially down south, the north being an exception with smallies, and everyone's seen what's going on with MLF and the St. Lawrence. Smallmouth being the exception, about everywhere in the country, everyone's in basically summer patterns now. And if I know you well enough, this is your favorite time of year because you love to get on the graphs, get out the big rod or the big plug, and you like to go to work. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Okay. So now that it's this time of year, you know, things are starting to set up, things are looking right. You're going to check these offshore areas, these areas where there's summer patterns, where fish are starting to show up on your side imaging, you're graphing them. They're like, what are the first things when you get out, when you know it's going to be a summer pattern, you launch the boat, what are the first things that you're going to do? I mean, are you spending hours on the graph? I mean, what's kind of your process to go find these summer fish?
Yeah, like you know, first, if it's something you're going to want to do, or if you're wanting to do it, if you want to fish offshore, you kind of got to commit to it. You know, the guys that do well offshore fishing, you think of like Keith Combs, guys like that, they're not going out there for an hour. You know, it's kind of slow. Let's go fish some docks. Let's go flip this grass and then back out. Like, you're committing to it. You know, you're just in that mindset that they're out here and I'm going to do what I got to do to get them. And usually if you're like that, you're going to come across them. So yeah, if I'm in that situation where I'm in a tournament situation where I know it's going to get one out, or I want fun fishing and it's all I want to do, it's all I'm doing, you know. And I'm gonna, if it takes me 3 hours, if it takes me 8 hours of looking out there, then so be it. You know, it's a lot of downtime, you know, for a little reward, but that reward is really exciting. So I'm putting the boat in gear. I'm scanning areas where I think they're going to be, you know, if we're on the TVA or lake with current, you're going to look for those areas where the current's hitting it, where there's a current break. You know, that almost makes it easier because you can almost run a pattern more so. You know, you can kind of look at your lake master or whatever mapping you have and visualize the way that current's hitting and what are those high percentage spots going to be. And usually I'll go to the most obvious stuff first, where a creek channel hits the main river, you know, maybe a big sunken island in the middle, something that's super obvious. just to kind of like get the day going. Because typically what looks good to us as anglers is where the fish are going to be. You know, that's typically your community holes, the stuff that's real obvious. So I'll get on that stuff, you know, hopefully catch a few fish, find some fish. And then after I've kind of established, you know, maybe the depth they're in, if they're in 10 foot, 20 foot, then I'll start branching out and I'll start looking for less obvious things, you know, and that's a lot of times where you're going to find your bigger fish. You know, maybe not the massive schools of fish that are sitting on a real obvious piece of structure, but usually that's how you find those real big ones, the ones that are maybe easier to bite because no one's found them, stuff like that. So I'd always, you know, if you're going to do it, get out there, commit to it, start with the real obvious, try to determine what's going on, maybe what bait they want, stuff like that, and then start expanding.
Right. Okay, so when you're headed out and you obviously, you know, they're in summer patterns, and you know you're going to be spending time on the graph, is there a specific depth range that you like to start in, or do you kind of look at the map, look what's good, and just kind of start running stuff that looks good and get a kind of try to figure out a depth range from there?
Yeah, you know, I do research like most of us do before coming to a place, so you kind of have an idea. Hey, you know, Kentucky Lake 10 to 20 foot ledges is usually a good deal. You know, if you're up north, Lake Champlain, maybe 20 to 40 foot rock piles, stuff like that. So I'll start, you know, I usually do my research and I'll start in those depths, but you don't, you know, I always, or I should, at least me, I never overlook, you know, the kind of out of the box stuff. So I will spend time, if I think it's a 10 to 20 foot lake, I'll spend time in 30 to 40 to 50, you know, try to get extreme. And I'll do the opposite. You know, if I'm looking up and there's like, wow, man, that's a 6 foot hump that looks really good, you know, I'm not going to ignore it. I'll go over there and look at that too. But typically you have a pretty good idea coming into it where the fish should set up. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I think most of the companies now have the map shading where you can kind of dial in that depth. So once I figure out, you know, oh, they're in 15 foot, I'll make sure I set my Lake Master, you know, to highlight that area of the lake, and then the obvious stuff or all the structure really starts popping out and you can just start running and gunning the things that are in that depth zone.
And have you found that kind of majority of the time, like when they're in that depth range, that's kind of usually going to translate the same amongst the entire body of water that you're fishing?
Yeah, typically, you know, I mean, if you were, you know, typically, at least with a reservoir, you got the upper end, which is a river, you got the lower end, which is the deep dam, and then the stuff in the middle. Way up the river, usually it's a shallower deal. At the dam, like, you know, close to the dam, it's usually deeper. But I'd say that middle 80%, it's pretty patternable. The fish are probably going to be in similar depth ranges throughout that main 80% of the lake.
Right. Okay. So I'm so curious because I've never actually gotten into this conversation, but it's something I've thought about a lot. A good buddy of ours, Benjamin Nowak. Actually, you probably know Ben because he's a Michigan boy too.
Yeah.
So him and I have talked about this theory of giant smallies and kind of like just as they're like just kind of how territorial they are in nature, how like if you find a massive school of smallies, you might be able to catch some 5s, maybe a 6 out of it. But he had this theory that like these 7-pounders, these freaks of nature like to kind of hang by themselves and kind of away from that massive school. When it comes to big largemouth or even spotted bass, do you think that kind of behavior translates, or do you think that they get in the mix of all those small ones? Because I've seen time and time again where guys will catch small one, giant, and then back to small ones. But I'm just curious if you've ever seen that theory kind of work for largemouth.
No, I think you're dead on. I mean, and I think, you know, obviously you might be catching 2-pounders and a guy could catch a 10-pounder, like it happens. But I think the best way to look at this is when you look at a tournament, especially like a multi-day tournament or a big tournament with 200 boats or something, not a, you know, when you get a 5 to 10 boat tournament around the house, typically the guy that catches the biggest fish, he's probably going to win the tournament or be real close. It's very rare in a big tournament with a lot of boats that the guy that catches the biggest fish wins the tournament or even does well. And typically it's because he's on the wrong pattern. You know, he caught one of those giant fish that's just, you know, out there by itself. He's not on a school of 4 to 5 pound smallmouth. He's doing, you know, not the stuff to win the tournament, but he caught a random 7-pounder or a 6-pounder. So I think you're exactly right. And I'm not bashing that. I'm just saying typically tournament winning fish, are not with the biggest fish in the lake or those freak giants. So those big fish do live by themselves. You know, you'll see guys weigh in an 8-pounder up north and have 3 fish. And like, how does that happen? You know, but it's because they weren't really on the deal. They just got lucky and got into one of those real big ones living by itself. So I certainly agree with that.
Right.
Like you hear a lot of like the really good smallmouth fishermen, like the top guys. You're like, what's your biggest smallmouth? I think it's gonna be like 9 pounds, 8 pounds. A lot of them are like, you know, 6 1/4. And it's like, how you've won so many tournaments, you know, you're dominant. But they're always doing the thing to catch the most 4 to 5 pounders. They're not out there looking for one bite or
one
rogue
giant.
Not on the right stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of trophy hunting, they're more on a consistent bite, which
they're looking for numbers of quality fish.
Yeah, I think a great example of that, whether it was on purpose or not, and it's not a shot at him whatsoever because I love the guy. But Derek Hudnall, when you guys came to Cayuga, he had 3 fish, but he had like an 8.5 pounder for New York, which is an absolute giant.
Right, and I want to say he had like 3 for 15, so he had some good ones to go with it. You know, but obviously he wasn't on that mass of 3 to 4 pound fish that a lot of guys were.
Yeah, exactly. He had you're right. I think he had 3 for like 14 or 16 pounds, something along those lines. But like I think that's probably essentially what the pattern he was on, and he probably figured out in practice. He goes, oh, maybe if I get, you know, he probably got a big bite off of it, and then probably said, hey, if I can run this and just go for 5, I'm gonna have a big bag. And obviously didn't get 5. That's probably kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, guys that go out, they catch a rogue giant, and then they just can't. They're not on that consistent bite for 4.5, 5 pounders like you mentioned, which is going to win you a 4-day event. Yeah,
correct.
That's super. It's a cool theory I like to talk about all the time. Just kind of, it's a difference between tournament fishing and it's a difference between like giant hunting, and the guys that can kind of find a medium between the two are the guys that are going to be more consistent and win more often, or at least in my mind. But
I do not disagree. So
yeah, you being a smallmouth guy, Andrew, what's your kind of take on that? And kind of your experience with it being an Erie boy.
I'll kind of go off like my Erie experience. So a lot of times if you find big schools of fish, they're 2 to 4 pounds. And you can tell right away when you drop on them because the first fish that bites is the size of the school, always. I found a lot of like the 3 to 5 pound class will live in schools of like, let's call it 3 to 10 fish. The more fish that are in that school, the easier they are to catch. But you can come up to a random rock pile and you'll mark 1 or 2. Those are usually your biggest fish, but they almost never eat except for like very specific periods of time of day. So I always save those fish for the end of the day, but it's the same thing. They're literally grouped up. 2 to 3 pounders, 3 to 5, and then anything over that, it's always 1 or 2 fish on a rock pile. Always. Especially now that we're getting into summer, like mid-July on, that is the pattern.
It's such an interesting concept to dive into. It's kind of cool, and it takes a lot of guts to try to go after that pattern of leaving the school when you're catching them every drop or every cast, whatever have you, to like try and go find a bigger bite. It takes guts, really, and it takes a lot. I feel like it's an experience thing to know when you need to make that move.
Well, and I think it's a time on the water thing, and Garrett can say this too. It's time on the water. You can tell when you have to leave a school and go elsewhere, but also based on the weather and stuff, you know, if it's an individual tournament and you're like, I need 24 pounds to win today, you're going to try to chase those individual fish more because they're smallmouth. One of them are going to fire. So if you have 1,000 rock piles and you just run to them all day long, one of those schools is going to fire and you're going to do pretty good at some point.
Right. So Garrett, I know you're a very tech-savvy angler with your graphs, and I thoroughly enjoy every time you post the screenshots of you side imaging. One, because I've saved on Instagram, you can do like the save button. Oh, yeah. I have like 10 images saved from your profile for specifically when I went over to Humminbird, so I have the settings right, just to kind of play around with it. But so I know you're very good at reading a graph, seeing how fish set up, and you hear so many guys talk about, oh, I could tell how they were set up on the graph that they were going to eat. For people, and even like myself, where sometimes I can't tell all the time how they're, if they're going to commit, if they're not. What's kind of a good telltale sign when you're graphing over fish, whether it be on down imaging, sonar, side imaging, when you can tell fish are set up right, that they're bass and they're going to commit?
Yeah. So if you're spending time with her, you're going to see fish 2-3 foot off the bottom. You're going to see fish glued right to the bottom. You're going to see fish maybe in the middle of the water column. But like when you know what's going to happen, typically you're going along, you're looking at your down imaging, and the fish are about a foot off the bottom. All the same. Whatever fish you're seeing, they're all about the same distance off the bottom. Usually it's that 1 foot is the ideal. And on the side imaging, you'll see the fish. You'll see like the little white spot as the fish, and you'll see just a tiny gap, and then you'll see a shadow on the bottom right behind it. So if you see the fish way up and you see the shadow, this far off your screen, that fish is way off the bottom because it's marking it over here. So on side imaging, the shadow is right there on the fish. Down imaging, the fish is about a foot off the bottom. Those are your most active fish when you go over them. Those are the ones when I see them, I'm excited. I'm not picking up a drop shot. I'm going with a crankbait, swim bait, something big. I'm going, for the home run right there. I'm going for the biggest fish. I'm not playing around. You're throwing your biggest, fastest stuff in there and getting to work. So I'd say that 1 foot is like the number, when they start getting way off the bottom, then you got to start, getting tricky to try to get them to bite with different baits that aren't on the bottom. And if they're glued on the bottom, sometimes that looks really good when they're just stuck there. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to drag a, jig on these fish and get it right in their face, and you'll catch them, but they're not in that ready to feed mode like they are when they're 1 foot up.
Right.
So real quick, I just want to show you this video, Garrett, that I think you're just going to find crazy. It's from April on the river right by me, the Niagara River. Hold on. Look at the pet of if you can kind of see it. The glare is terrible.
Okay, I can see it now.
Yeah, those are all smallies.
Really? Wow. Yeah. So that's
and,
you can see. Yeah, you can see the fish, see the shadow. Yeah, right there.
In 3.5 hours in one evening, we caught 45, including one that was 6'3".
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's like the dream right there, man. That's
wild.
That gets me excited looking at that.
And they're all just like you said, about a foot off the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I was trying to show it that if you look real close, you'd see the white spot and just a tiny shadow just past it.
Right, just past it. Yeah. And different fish are different. Like smallmouth, sometimes smallmouth, like they get real territorial of a rock. So like I've marked a rock, and then you'll see the fish, and they'll be 4 foot off the bottom, but they're thick like this.
Yeah.
They just want to sit around that rock. Those can be active fish. Spotted bass are a little bit different. They're not always going to be on the bottom. But that general rule of right off the bottom is your ideal situation.
Right. And so you mentioned throwing, big plug, big swim bait, and that was going to kind of be my next direction in talking about, like, when you do find these fish, they look set up, and you actually, you turn around and get your boat set up and actually fire a cast. So I have the same thought in mind as I'm going to go fast and I'm going to go big first before I even try to downsize or finesse down. And something interesting when Andrew and I had Buddy Gross on is he's like the complete opposite track mind. And it might be just because he's Chickamauga and they have 1,400 boats on there every single weekend. And what he mentions is that he goes slow. He starts with like a football jig first to try to target, because like what you mentioned, those fish that are close to the bottom tend to be more aggressive. He's going to target more aggressive fish first. Do you ever kind of have, and I know obviously you mentioned that you start with a big plug or swim bait, but like, is there ever a time where to start with something maybe more finesse or something that's on the bottom, more slow moving, something that you're kind of dragging versus burning or putting a bigger presentation?
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, Buddy lives in Chickamauga, one of the most pressured lakes in the country. Those fish are so smart. You throw a crankbait in there, they'll swim away. So you got to get out there and fish a little bit and kind of get the feel of the lake. I'm just talking like dream scenario. I know they're biting. I'm gonna start. In my mind, I want the biggest fish first. Usually, biggest fish, crankbait, swim bait, in my opinion. So if I think they're biting, that's what I'm going with, and then I'll progress. I'll drag a worm. I'll go to a jig next, usually. Maybe like a hair jig if I catch a few and the fish get off the bottom, and then I go finesse. Used to be a drop shot a lot. Nowadays, even the drop shots, they've kind of gotten smart to that. So I go to a Nico rig. That's kind of like my progression. But yeah, so like Gunnersville, Chickamauga, if they've been out there for a little bit, I know guys have been fishing for them. You're exactly right. I'm not gonna, or our buddy's exactly right. Or you're right. Whoever, everyone's right. Yeah,
Everybody's right at one time.
The most important thing when you're managing an offshore area is you got to get the bite, you got to get the first bite, and it's so tricky because you can mess it up and ruin the greatest spot in the lake. So if I know I'm in a pressured situation, and if I'm going to throw something big in there, they're going to swim away, I'm absolutely starting with a Nico rig or a drop shot just to get the bite, get the fish feeling good, get them fired up. And usually I won't make another cast. I'll get back up with a crankbait, swim bait, something bigger, and start trying to get to work. But yeah, you got to kind of have a feel of what's going on. Down in Texas on some of those lakes that don't get as much pressure, or, up north, typically you don't have to do that. But yeah, the biggest thing is you have to do what you think you need to do to get that first bite. That is so critical, because there is going to be a cast or two that's going to determine the next hour of your fishing day.
Now, I guess that could be a good segue into the next point of Mega Live,
Mm-hmm.
and how much that is going to change the game for you on like ledges and stuff. Because now you're going to be able to burn that crankbait through there, right? Hypothetically speaking, and see that fish turn away or chase it. So that first cast, you're going to be able to know instead of wasting 2 or 3 casts and trying to reposition the fish. So kind of talk into that now.
Yeah. So, I mean, the world knows we've all gotten Mega Live. I haven't had a ton of time to use it. I shouldn't say I haven't had a ton of time to use it. I haven't had a ton of time to dial it in because it's been so rough around my house. I've been in like 3-foot waves on St. Clair the last 2 weeks. But, that live, a lot of people with these front sonars is they think, the pros are cheating and stuff because they can see the fish eat the bait. And that happens. Like, it's cool to see one come up and get it, but it's the ultimate learning tool. Now you can see if the fish followed your bait and turned away, if he just completely swam away from the bait, if he came up and nipped at it and didn't get it. And now you can, instead of fishing it for 15 casts, like you said, and not getting a bite, you could say, hey, I made 1 cast, that fish tracked it, but he didn't quite commit. Maybe I just got to change my color and I'll get that fish. Or maybe I threw it in there and they all swam away. Yeah. Or I threw it in there and they just darted away from it. Hey, I got to like calm down and I got to throw something finesse to get these fish to bite. So yeah, it's going to be, such a huge help on just seeing the fish's reaction towards the bait and not spending 4 hours of the day trying to dial in what they want to eat that day. You might take 4 casts and you might have the right combination. That is the biggest thing. It's not about, we're going to see fish bite the baits and that's exciting, but it's just the learning tool of how the fish are actually reacting to what we're doing.
Oh yeah. I think it's wicked too for you Humminbird pros, because now you have a total boat network that's like, and it's almost sounding like we're getting into a whole Humminbird plug in here, but it's true in the fact that literally Humminbird's got literally everything now. You have like they have trademarked the total boat network. You literally have the total boat, like you have everything, and it's all connected now. It's all network. And it's kind of cool because and through work, I got the chance to talk to Palaniuk about it. And he goes, it kind of adds a step in the process of finding fish where before Mega Live for you guys, you obviously you'd graph these fish, you get your boat up, and you'd use 360 to essentially try to find them, just 360 or your down imaging. But now you can get up, use 360 to find your cover. And then you can use your Mega Live to now figure out on that cover what the fish are actually doing and make specific casts. It's how much time have you been able to put in since putting Mega Live on?
Yeah, not a ton. I've had it on for a couple of weeks now, but like I said, it was super rough on St. Clair, and it was like hard to stay on the trolling motor. So I went out there. I did catch a bunch of fish with it. But it's hard when your trolling motor's out of the water half the day. You still got to be in the water to see it.
You got to be able to read the graph.
Right. So, but I did catch a ton of fish with it the few days I was out there, and then I actually did a local tournament last weekend, and it's kind of funny. Like this is a perfect example of what this sonar does. Is I got a lake that I love to throw a square bill on. It's just a little dirty reservoir, and I usually go around and I throw a square bill on all the shoreline cover. So I go to my favorite point. I haven't been out here in like a year. I go to my favorite point, throw it out there, catch like a 3-pound largemouth, which is a huge fish on this lake. Throw a square bill back out there, catch a 2.6 smallmouth, and I have another smallmouth on the same cast, and that one comes off. So, anyways, I catch those 2 fish, and before I had this, I'd have hit 4 more points in the next 20 minutes just trying to cover water, catch fish. Now with this sonar, I turn it out there and I look at the end of the point, like 10 foot of water, see a little group of fish, throw a little net rig to them and catch 3 more smallmouth, fill my limit, and finish 3rd place just off of 1 spot. So, just being able to see those bonus fish where before I had this, I would have been gone. And, I probably would have just caught 2 fish the whole tournament, honestly, because those were literally the only 5 fish I caught that I kept. So, it's,
I guess you could say it makes you more efficient.
More efficient, yeah. And, there's just a lot of stuff that you miss. I could think of great examples of like going to Eufaula, where you go pull up on some of these points and there's probably brush piles. Instead of having to throw your worm in every single one of them, I can just point it. Okay, they're fishing this one, catch them, and move on. So it's going to cut down a ton of time. You're going to see a bunch of stuff that you don't miss or that you've missed, and it's all going to make us better anglers. And I'm kind of interested to see how the fish react to it, because the Mother Nature always changes to protect itself. So it might make fishing really tough, or it might completely change their behavior. So it'll be cool to see what happens in 3 or 4 years down the road.
Yeah, before that technology, you're kind of relying on your angler instinct to tell when those fish behaviorally are changing. But now you can visually see through the technology how they're changing their behavior. And I guess this could have been a question for forward-facing sonar since its inception. But I think for the most popular things people have seen is, one, smallmouth and just dropping on fish in general, maybe spotted bass. But I think the biggest thing that people have seen forward-facing sonar is a jerkbait. But knowing you and knowing how creative you are, and having talked to Zaldane as well, who's kind of a think outside the box type of angler as well, where it's really intriguing to see this forward-facing sonar being used in creative ways. Where, like, Zaldane mentioned to me over the phone that he was throwing this big flutter spoon on housing foundations at the Classic and watching his flutter spoon. And I thought that was badass in its right. But, like, what creative ways are you thinking of using it potentially? You don't have to give these secrets out if you don't want, by all means. But
right. No, I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, I think this is going to open up a little bit of different approach to bed fishing. Not talking like smallmouth or anything, but I think, and the only reason I say this is because I have a lake by the house that's normally pretty dirty, and when we go out there and bed fish, it's always like in 1.5 foot of water, whatever you can see the bottom, right? I mean, that's how we bed fish. You got to see the bottom. You got to see the bottom. Well, same thing this spring. It was dirty, and then it cleaned up around Memorial Day, and I just went out there and I didn't see any on beds, but I saw just an unbelievable amount of beds in like 5 to 6 foot of water that I would have never guessed that they would have spawned that deep, because the light literally can't get that deep, or at least I thought it couldn't, because you can't see down there. So I think one thing that's going to happen is we're going to see offshore bed fishing or off the bank of bed fishing for sure. Like, I think that's one thing that's going to open up. I mean, from what I saw on this lake, we're talking 10 to 15% of the fish spawn where we can see them. So it just so happened that the lake cleared, right after they were done spawning. So I could see where it all happened. But I think the offshore bed fishing thing, might be something that we as anglers have completely overlooked, and maybe this sonar allows us now to target that.
Would that be like the perspective view then, where you kind of can see like the bottom coned out on the degrees when you pan it?
I mean,
you'd be able to see the beds.
Right. I think you can use it that way. To me, it's, since I have 360, it's mostly going to be a forward view thing for me. The 360 is so good now. I can kind of see the dimples in the bottom and stuff. You can really honestly see beds with 360. Now I can see, I can point it there and see for sure if there's a fish sitting in there, and I can just go over there and make a waypoint and come back in a tournament and catch it. So, but yeah, if you only have, the forward sonar, then yeah, maybe switching to that landscape perspective mode, might be a better option, because you get more bottom contact, and you can see, if that fish is sitting in a certain area.
And I can see that forward-facing sonar, using Mega Live being more effective for finding those deeper largemouth that are spawning versus smallmouth, because people know that when smallmouth spawn, they create this massive hard bottom bed that, obviously should. I mean, Andrew, how deep was the one that you graphed that was spawning that you could see on a bed on Erie?
On my side scan, it was 37 foot.
Yeah, like
I believe it.
It's like it's not a hard thing to figure out when a smallmouth is spawning versus a largemouth is completely different. Where on 360, you might not be even able to tell that there's even there's a bed out there. Whereas you could obviously flash over your Mega Live and be like, okay, that fish is not moving, and you being an angler with your talent, you can tell pretty fast. Yeah. With your talent, you can tell, like, okay, the way that fish is behaving, that fish is on a bed, just being time of year, putting it together. Whereas, 360, you might not have been able to even see that fish, where now you can.
Right.
That's a really cool concept that I never really thought of. That's pretty cool. Being able to see. I mean, it's going to be interesting now, too, is one, I mean, obviously you're going to probably have to rely a lot on just watching your bait fall within that certain area, but you're going to be kind of just line watching essentially majority of the time then, if you're going to be like talking about actually casting a line towards these fish. But I feel like those fish, though, that are deeper, muddier water, that are on beds, they're probably not. I think once you can get like the cast correct, I feel like they're probably not going to be that hard to trick.
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, from what I've experienced with smallmouth, we fish really deep beds with smallmouth. Now, is it hard to get in the bed? Absolutely. If you're in 12 foot of water, it is hard. Even if you're straight up on top of the bed, it's difficult to get into an area like this. But typically, once you do, I mean, you get bit instantly. So yeah, those fish, they probably can't see you or they can't feel you as well as one that's up on the bank in 6 inches. And yeah, if a guy can figure out how to present that bait right, you probably catch every single one of them. Right.
That's where the old flogger comes in handy.
Right.
Which, like, completely other, a complete tangent. But, like, have you seen, like, MLF has been getting shredded for the use of this flogger, as if it's, like, some new thing. Like, it's
groundbreaking technology.
Right. I've had this conversation 10 times already.
I'm sure you have, yeah.
I mean, I've been using that thing for 10 years and doing well with it. I mean, it's an unbelievable tool. And I think that the guys that, don't want us to use the floggers, that it should be outlawed. If we're going to do it, I don't want polarized sunglasses, no fluorocarbon, no spot lock on the trolling motor, no 4-stroke engines. Like, let's just put on 20-pound mono and spinner baits and go fishing if we're going to do this.
Heck yeah.
I mean,
it sounds like fun to me.
It's a piece of plastic with plexiglass. I mean, come on. We haven't had a ton of, and the funny thing is like, there's been a lot of, especially the SLW Toyota series on Champlain. Like, they've been doing that for, I mean, they were up there 3 or 4 years in a row and it was dominated with that. So I don't know why it's just now like such a shock, but there has been no real
there too.
Right. It was Josh Douglas using like an ice fishing rod for bed fishing.
Yeah. I guess maybe, this is the first live televised tournament that I can think of where it really dominated. So maybe, I guess a lot of the guys are just seeing it for the first time, but this is this isn't groundbreaking. I mean, everyone that lives up north expected that tournament to go exactly as it did. I mean, it's just
about as archaic as it comes.
Right. This is just spawning smallmouth fishing. It's just what you do. It's like going down south and spraying, dish soap out there to clear off the beds on largemouth. I mean, that's just what you do. Yeah. So
I think anyone that hates one on a flogger or hates two on forward-facing sonar are people that just have never used either of them. Because once you do, they are so much fun. They're so much fun.
They are, yeah.
Because there's no much more fun than watching fish eat. I mean, granted, one's a screen versus one's like you're watching through some glass at watching bedfish eat. I mean, that's probably the most. I mean, almost every angler you talk to, some of the most fun they have is watching bass actually eat. Yeah. Anyone who hates on that you shouldn't be fishing.
Right. No, it is a ton of fun, but at the same time, you're not going to go pick it up and then go win a MLF tournament. You look at the standings, the top smallmouth guys in the world were in the top 10, and the best fishermen in the world won the tournament. It didn't make or break. It's not like secret potion to going out there and just beating everybody. Like it's still the best guys or the guys that were, should have done well, really realistically did well in that tournament. So it's just a tool, and the cream of the crop will still rise to the top.
A little sidebar here that I thought was funny while watching that live is the first day they all had orange floggers, right? Mm-hmm. And I think people like roasted them on the internet, like all the Northerners. And the next day they're all like black duct tape. Everyone of them. I was dying. I was like, what is going on here?
It might have been so. Yeah. So when we first got it, I mean, like I said, 10 years ago, and there wasn't a lot of guys doing it. We taped ours black just so people couldn't see us doing it across the lake, because that thing stands out like you wouldn't believe. I mean, you can see it a mile away.
Yeah.
So we tape ours black so no one could see it, and we thought we were being sneaky. But then I realized how much better it is when it is black, because through that orange, the sunlight actually gets in there pretty good, and it makes it tougher to see. And when you black it out, it's like a whole new world, like looking into whatever, like that.
It's like putting blackout shades on your house and turning off all the lights in the middle of the day.
Exactly. So I don't know if the guys were, more so worried about getting roasted, or if a lot of the guys realized, hey, if I black mine out, I'll be able to see way better. It might have been a little bit of that too.
Yeah, but you would think that ahead of the tournament with the light thing, even if they were practicing and they were looking, they would have done it.
That's true.
So that was my thought process.
Yeah, a lot of them guys probably show up to the ramp and were like, "Whoa, this guy's got his blacked out. That's a good idea. I better go to that for day 2."
Yeah.
Right. So you guys were allowed to watch, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We can watch.
Yeah,
we can. I can't get somebody up and get into details, but anything that was shown, I could watch, and I honestly don't watch a ton of it.
Are we allowed to talk about the live? I don't want to get you in trouble. Is basically my only asking.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
We'll just not even go into it. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll save it for after. We'll get you back on after St. Lawrence, and then we'll have that conversation about.
We'll do a St. Lawrence recap in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
right,
perfect.
All right, you're signed up. I hope you know you're committed. You got to come back up. Better idea. We'll come up. You stay there. We'll come up and we'll go fish to St. Lawrence. Is what we'll do.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Or I was say, or you can come here.
You ain't
got
to trick me into fishing.
Still going to be done in Buffalo too. So.
But so one last question about offshore fishing, then we're going to move on to a different topic here. So one thing from Chickamauga and talking about Major League Fishing really fast. When KVD won Chickamauga, one of the points that he made was how interesting, how the concept of when you graft fish, you had to give, like you'd find fish and you have to give them a little bit. Talking about pressured fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
You'd give him a little bit because he could tell in the side imaging that the way they're positioned. He mentioned something about how the fish were almost at an arc toward like a diagonal where he could tell that they were boat shy, where they would like he'd graph over them and they'd be positioned
like they're swimming away.
Like they're swimming away.
Yeah.
When you encounter something like that, are you gonna like what's your kind of approach to it? Do you change up kind of what your first things you're gonna cast at them is? Do you give them time after you graft over them? It's like mark the area and give them a time period, or how do you put that?
Yeah, I can't say I've exactly seen, what he's saying. I mean, I know what you're talking about. I don't think I've ever been in a tournament situation where I saw him swimming away. But for me, like, in practice, I can graph them and like, if they don't bite, that sucks, but whatever. Like, I'm still marking. I'm still probably coming back in the tournament to fish it, because if I see 50 fish, I'm going to throw on them in the tournament.
Yeah.
But in the tournament or in tournament situations now, I always pull up and start fishing. I don't scan them first ever, because they are getting smart to that boat engine. And I'll stand up and fish. And if I'm not catching them or I'm not seeing much, then I'll sit down and maybe go down that ledge for a couple hundred yards and see if I can re-find them. But yeah, I like doing as little as possible when I'm actually trying to catch the fish. So if they're there, I'd start up and I'd start fishing for them right away. If Kevin's seeing them and they're moving around, I think obviously that was the right call. Giving them another 20 minutes to set back. I mean, we do that when we're fishing and catching them. You catch a couple, they kind of shut down. Just drift back the ledge, 80 yards. Let the fish get back up there, get comfortable. Kind of ease your way back and start getting them again. So yeah, when those fish move, you don't want to keep throwing your bait in there and let them know that something odd is going on. You want to let them get in there and get comfortable and then get after them.
That makes sense. Do you find that a lot of fish kind of are mobile on ledges, or are there certain areas that they'll sit on over others?
So, like I found some really good schools on just a do nothing ledge. Just a contour with no breaks, nothing in it. Those schools to me are pretty mobile. They're just sitting on there and they're just going up and down and doing whatever they're doing. If I find one like on a point or on the tip of a hump, typically they're there when you come back.
Right.
If they're going to move, it's going to be based off current. When they're running current, usually, or let's say you find them running current one day and you come back and they're running the same amount of current, they should be in that same spot. They usually are. If one day they're not pulling, maybe they'll kind of drift off into the channel and swim away. But typically when conditions are the same, they're in that same spot. If it's a precise piece of structure, if it's just all the same for miles, they have the ability to kind of move around and, do whatever they do.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's got to be, I mean, when you talk about ledge fish or schools that on just like a contour where there's nothingness where they can kind of be mobile, that Mega Live is going to come in handy for trying to be more effective, at least with those fish,
Sure.
The 2 or 3 that you can catch before they're gone and you have to go find them again. But
right.
That's a really interesting concept to me. But so kind of changing gears here and a subject that I know can be kind of touchy for some, but and I completely respect you kind of taking it on. I know we had the conversation offline about it. Is keeping the train on the tracks when things aren't going your way, because we all talk about how mental this sport can be and how easy you can be thrown off your game when you think negative and when things don't go your way. But I know you've done a really good job of staying positive, keeping the train on the tracks, even if you haven't been getting the results that you wanted. And it's been results that you've shown that you can prove to do. But you've been dealing with some hits the past 2 years.
Right.
So kind of talk to us.
To say the least.
Yeah, and talk to us about how you've been how you've been capable of keeping the train on the tracks, moving forward.
It's, yeah, fishing is one of those things. Like I have no idea why momentum matters, but it does. You would think you'd fish at one lake in Texas and go to one in Alabama, and everything's brand new and fresh, but it's not. You kind of carry what you're left with. So yeah, I've been in one of those terrible ruts. I think it really started here at St. Clair last year. I had a good day 1 and I had a terrible day 2, and I think I cashed a check at Gunnersville after that, barely. And then since then it's been really tough. And the funny thing is, and I've had this conversation a lot. The funny thing is when you watch a fishing tournament on the outside, you just see the scoreboard, right? You come in, you're like, oh man, that guy's in 70th. He sucks. He sucks this tournament. But there's a lot of things that go on in the day that you don't see, whether it's missed fish, equipment problems. Maybe they did just go out there and not get the bites and have a bad day, which has happened plenty of times. But it's been one of those years where I've had a lot of stuff happen that just normally doesn't happen to me. I'm a real particular guy. I feel like my tackle is really in good shape. I use what I feel like is the best line and hooks, and I never feel like I use the wrong setup for any kind of technique. And I've had a lot of fish come off. I've had line break, which is just like, that doesn't happen to me. I've had some mechanical issues, which has just completely wiped out my day. And then I've had some times where I just haven't been on them, and it's, I haven't been on them and I didn't catch them in the tournament. So it's been a kind of a combination of all 3 of those things. But when you look back at it, or when I look back at it, I can think of 5 or 6 little situations, and instead of having, all subpar finishes, I could have easily had 3 or 4 top 10s, plenty of checks, plenty of cuts. So, you just got to kind of look at it like that way. I mean, it's one of those sports. It's just so unbelievably close, like all sports at the top level. I mean, you talk to in the NFL, the guy on the bench is just a hair slower than the star guy on the team, So it's just such a slim margin that, you're close, you've had the opportunities, and you just keep working, and things turn around. And when they turn around, I'll be ready to, make the most of it. I mean, I've been in a situation where I fished 7 major tournaments and I made 5 top 5s. So I know what it's like when things are going right. You just got to be prepared for it and capitalize.
Yeah. I guess you just had to keep that mental attitude in the game. Be like, all I am is one good bite away today. All I am is one good tournament away, and then you're running at one good day, then one good tournament,
Right.
and then it kind of snowballs, and then you'll get into 2 good tournaments, 3 good tournaments. So
Right.
we know that's coming for you. So
yeah, fishing, and the thing that's cool about fishing is like it's not like a hockey game. You know, I watched you watched what was it, Tampa Bay? They were up 7-0 the other game.
Yep.
It's like when you're on the opposite team, you've lost. You're not going to score 7 goals and come back. In fishing, you can have 0 fish at 2 o'clock, and one guy can have 20 pounds, and you can easily beat them. You know, with 6 casts, 5 casts.
Yeah.
So it is. You're never out of it. You know, if you're for all you guys that fish tournaments or you're fun fishing and you've had a miserable, terrible day, the day doesn't have to end like that. I mean, it is so easy to get on the right spot, change to the right lure, and have a great day. So that's the cool thing about this sport is that it's not like it doesn't like accumulate against you. You just got to do it for one day, or you just got to make the most of that 5-minute window, and then move on to the next.
Oh yeah, and dude, I respect the hell out of that mindset, and it's a good one, and obviously it's a successful one. And you know, every angler, regardless of who they are, is gonna have these swings. You're gonna have bad years, and you're gonna have good years. Fishing is one of those deals where there's so many different variables that are at play. You know, we talk about hockey. It's you versus your own brain versus the opponent. And, you know, some games it might be the refs. But like other than that, I mean, fishing, there's so many different things. You know, you have the fish, you have your competitors, you have weather, you have in some situations it's current, it's a TVA that you're going up against, and whether or not they're gonna draw or push water. There's so many things that move around, and it's almost like a math equation for things to set up right. And that's why I think a lot of guys say, you know, when it's your time, it's your time. And you know, there's a lot of cases too where you might hear guys in practice and they come out saying like, "Oh, I'm on fish," and there's one variable that a lot of people don't really account for, that I don't think really people think about is like you could be on fish in practice, and you have the perfect game plan laid out. And nothing changes in tournament day where those fish are still there, but you don't account for 20 other boats having found that area, and then you have to share that water, which leads to not as big a bag because you're sharing fish. It becomes one of those things where it could have had the possibility, but it's also like your decision making is so important because it's also sometimes your decision making is affected by others' decision making, where you both have a great decision like of where to fish. But now because you both made a decision, it's less fish, less weight that you're both going to have if that makes any sense to people. I might be just talking. But
no, it does. It's the ultimate game of external factors. You know, I there's so many times where I wish this was like boxing, where I could just be in better shape than somebody and be able to punch harder and be able to go longer and just physically dominate someone. You know, just keep real simple. There's no just like going out there and enforcing your will onto your competitors. I mean, there are so many factors, like you said. I mean, and this year has been the ultimate for us. I mean, we've had floods, we've had low water, we've had the cold fronts like you've never seen. I mean, it's just been unbelievable. So yeah, there is so much that goes into having a successful tournament that it's really tough to have one.
Right, definitely. Andy, you got anything left for Garrett before we let him go here?
I just want to say safe travels and enjoy New York while you're here for what seems like you'll be here, 3 months because of what is it?
Yeah, so I'm going to be here.
Champlain, St. Lawrence, Oneida, St. Lawrence.
Yeah, so the first trip I'm going to be here for about a month. Yeah, those 3 tournaments. And then I'm actually coming back in the end of August for a St. Lawrence Toyota. And then we have 2 weeks off, and then we have the St. Lawrence Open. So yeah, I'm finishing the season in New York, dude. Like, there's no place I'd rather be. You talk about having a bad season. I've had a lot of success here, so this is a perfect opportunity to, erase some of the damage that I've done, and hopefully make some money.
Go get it done.
Yeah. Well, dude, obviously let us know. Give us a holler if you need anything while you're up here. And if you have some off days and want to fish with some scrubs, give us a holler and we'll come fish with you.
We'll do that. That'll be fun.
Yeah. If not, then I'll see you at Oneida and the St. Lawrence, hopefully, for the Opens. But dude, we're gonna let you go here. We appreciate you, obviously, big time, taking the time out and coming and talking with us and dropping some offshore knowledge. And not just us, but all the folks tuning in, watching, and listening. We appreciate it, and I'm gonna have to hold you to a St. Lawrence recap, and hopefully that recap includes a top 10 finish there.
Okay. Well, if it's 1 o'clock and I got one fish, I'll remember this conversation. So that'll be a little external motivation. I don't want to come on here and talk about how I finished 80th. So here we go.
I want it to be like, I hope, obviously, first of all, I hope you're not in that situation. But if you do, I just want you to picture a Star Wars where like the hologram face comes up, and just picture my face and be like, you have a recap episode. Go catch me.
Yeah. Dude, that's kind of a scary, that's like a scary visual that I'm getting. So
yeah, that's terrible. Like a Chewbacca Bailey.
Yeah, no words, just picture a Chewbacca with the noise. And that's it. That should be
That's funny.
It'll be a better
guys, I appreciate it. It's always fun coming on here as well. Thanks for having me again. And yeah, we'll when all these are through, we'll catch back up and give you the rundown on how it went. So
perfect. Heck yeah, dude. You always have a seat in this show, and obviously we'll talk to you real soon, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We'll see you guys.
Good night.
All right, Garrett. We'll talk soon. It's such a good conversation talking about mindset, because I feel like it's something a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say overlook, but I guess maybe they just don't spend enough time on.
Oh, mindset is everything. 100%, and decision making too. So like you have to stay mentally sharp.
Oh yeah, and I think one thing we talk about, you spoke about it, just get that next bite, and that's I feel like, and because I've personally done it as well, and I try to do that in term situations where one bite at a time, where if you try to focus on the big picture, oh, I need to catch 20 pounds today, I need to catch 5. I feel like you're too focused on the big picture and not at the small tasks. It kind of comes back to that saying where it's like, if you do all the small things, there are no big things. Where if you're like, okay, you launch, got the boat put in, you're like, okay, first bite. Focus on just getting the first bite and getting it in the boat. Once you get number 1 in the box, okay,
get number 2.
Next bite. Yeah, and that's all you focus on. Because I feel like if you focus on 5 and you focus on this big picture, you're just, next thing you know, it's from 8 a.m. becomes 2 p.m. and you're scrambling for a 2:30 finish or whatever it is, and you only have 2 or 3 in the box. And it's just a bad mental day. I feel like it's being mentally sharp, mentally focused. I feel like I'm kind of adding in there, mental stability, which is an interesting variable it's a hard variable to keep. Like, I mean, dude, us at Chautauqua, when we had 8 fish on and lost 8 fish before we even had one in the box. I mean, talk about a bad mental day. I would say that's a bad mental morning for us.
Yeah, that was brutal. And then we pulled into one of my spots that I always catch fish on. I caught 1 10-incher, and I was like, all right, we're going to the next community hole because we just need to get one in the boat. And then we ended up catching some good ones. But it settled us down. I think that was like 9:30 by the time we got one in the boat. So
I think the biggest thing, and maybe I'm speaking from experience, and being a competitor, being an athlete, I know you can attest to this. I know Garrett can attest to this. Being an athlete, you become so ultra competitive that you almost have this sense of, and maybe I'm the only one, kind of feeling this way. In my first couple of years of tournament fishing, being out of college, like I had this sense of like fearing failure, where like I don't want to suck because I'm afraid of just the fact of I sucked. Because when you're ultra competitive, you tend to be more successful than not. Where in fishing, it's hard to be more successful than not, if that makes any sense. You have to be comfortable with failure. You have to be comfortable with knowing that one of the variables didn't line up and you just didn't have a good day. But if you have your objective of fishing clean, making decisions you made, and you did the small things right, I mean, you can kind of almost just chalk it up that those bites just didn't show up where they should have been, or could have been, I should say. It's just one of those things where it's like you can't fear failure, and kind of I got that feeling of I kind of overcame that a year and a half ago, and I feel like that's where I found more success. And maybe it's just more of experience, but I feel like you fish freer, and when you fish free, for the most part, is when you're going to find you're going to be a little bit more successful in finding those fish.
Absolutely. It's really a hard mindset to battle through if you haven't done it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
a bunch of times. It's hard. Like I grew up wrestling, so it's always one-on-one type mentality. So when I fish, yes, I'm always thinking about the outside factors like where's this guy going? What is the wind doing? What is that doing? When ultimately all you have to worry about is you and the fish, because that's all you're really competing against. Is you could show up into an area and 3 other guys could be in your area, but if that's your best fish, you just have to worry about getting those fish into your boat as opposed to what the other people are doing. And the biggest thing I found for me to kind of get through that is wave, say hi, laugh when they catch a good one, because ultimately it doesn't affect you. They're fishing in a different section than you are. So if you're able to just breathe and relax, you're probably going to catch them too.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Aaron Martin's. Yeah, it was Aaron Martin's. I can't remember what show he was on, but I was listening to it, and he talks about people that mindlessly fish and how ineffective it is. Like when you're too worried about outside factors and you're just blindly casting, you're just casting, reeling, not really focusing on it, you're missing a lot of fish. Where he talks about every cast, he's almost essentially putting himself in the position of his bait, trying to feel every inch of water, whatever water column your bait might be in, picturing what it's doing, what it's mimicking, where your bait direction is. And once you start really focusing on cast by cast is when your chances, your percentages go up. Which
Absolutely.
is something really cool to talk about. And that really kind of, you hear a lot of people say, oh, fishing's so mental, but there's really no descriptor. I mean, I feel like that's a great kind of way to look at it.
Mental's the bubble, right? It's all these little bubbles inside the bubble of what fishing really is. Yeah, it is mental, but there's so many little pops that go into it of what makes up that mental bubble. It's not just one thing. It's 1,000 things. Each cast, there's 1,000 different things happening. It might not seem like it, but there really is.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Well, Andy, do you have anything left for the folks before we sign off tonight?
I am good, man. I am good.
Well, folks,
how are you?
I'm good, man. I am going to go to bed here. Fiance is waiting for me and going to get this uploaded, obviously, to the YouTube and the podcast.
Like, share, and subscribe, obviously.
And for folks that are still listening, one, bravo. We appreciate. If you're still listening right now, comment, especially if you're on the YouTube. If you're still listening right now on an MP3 and you haven't already, go to Apple. If you're on Apple, especially Apple Podcasts, give us a rating and review. We'd highly appreciate that. But also, if you want a chance to win some high-quality tungsten premium jigs, head over to our Instagram, and you guys can win yourself a pretty dope Queen Tackle jig package. Over 40 things in it. Like, obviously, like we mentioned in the introduction, there's 10 flipping jigs, 10 finesse football jigs, 10 switch blades, and 10 swim jigs. It's pretty dope. All you got to do is really follow us on Instagram and Queen Tackle, like the post, and that's it. Super easy. And the Queen Tackle stuff, you don't want to miss out on it because, like, that's like
it's
AJ/Jeff/Queen Tackles page. They literally post like everything on there. It's so low key, but so amazing at the same time. So I highly recommend you guys go to get in on that. And as always, we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys all on Monday Night Live.